This time I'm going to go over briefly the power exchange dynamic between the dominant and the submissive, and also cover the submissive role in general. I do this because I have always been the dominant. That's just my natural inclination. I have never had a relationship where I've been on the side of being the submissive. Now, while I am a very empathetic person, and I have sort of experienced by osmosis what my partners have experienced, and from what they have told me, it would be disingenuous of me to speak directly from that perspective. So, I will tell you what I know, and I will use the book to give me a bit of a guide here. So again, we're reading from Screw the Roses, Send Me the Thorns, and we are on page 9. Dominance and Submission, DNS, and that's D and S, not like DNS server, or DS. In exchange for obedience by the submissive, the dominant agrees to care for and work toward the pleasure of both partners. Thus empowered by the sub, the dominant takes control of their scenes and agrees to abide by the limits she sets. This refers back to something I mentioned in my introductory ramble about, sort of setting the guidelines or setting the boundaries, the rails of the roller coaster, so to speak. Some people extend DS roles outside the bedroom, often referring to each other as slave and master. Generally, these people consider themselves DS lifestylers. This is something that I refer to as a 24/7 power exchange, where, the relationship in total is sort of an ongoing back and forth dominant-submissive relationship. Now, some people, that works for them. A full spectrum power exchange is complicated, but that works for some. For me personally, I don't look for a full spectrum power exchange. When in the bedroom, certainly. In the everyday life of things, I enjoy the playfulness of knowing that we have this sort of two-person secret society, and there will be teasing and such involved even in public places, but actual power exchange, it's difficult to describe. I'm going to go on a tangent here because it's, my show. The dynamic I have enjoyed with a couple of my partners now has been such where the understanding of our roles and our significance to one another is such that there's always an undercurrent of power exchange, of their being the submissive and my being the dominant. But it is a playful one. It's one that can assert itself into arousal in regular everyday situations, but we understand that it is sort of like a game. It is something that's private, and we felt, talking in the past tense here, we felt comfortable enough with each other and our relationship that it didn't have to be taken direly seriously. In my case, my ego has not been so fragile that I need to feel like I am the super duper in control person all the time. No, I understand my role, they understand theirs, we trust one another, and it's much more fun that way. Now, some people need to be in control, and some people need to give up control, but we'll get to that shortly. Having the submissive set her own limits leads one to wonder who is really running the show. Where people are doing a now-and-again role play, this is a valid question. With a quote-unquote natural submissive, however, an innate craving to please her dominant is strong and unquestionable. A quote-unquote natural dominant also feels an instinctive need to feel in charge, yet neither can realize these parts of themselves without the other. And that's what we call a power exchange. I mean, if the submissive is not willing to give over control to the dominant cannot take control from the submissive, and, there's no mutual pleasure there. Because if the dominant is taking control without the submissive's trust or consent, that's not consensual, just by definition. Moving on to page 11. Submissive. A person who surrenders control of herself to her dominant. The submissive, while putty in the hands of a dominant whom she trusts and respects, is likely to be independent and assertive in any other arena. Her sexual submissive nature makes her no more vulnerable to people hawking aluminum siding, encyclopedias, or life insurance than anyone else. And this is one of the more common dynamics I've seen in submissives that I've known socially or have been in a relationship with. In their everyday life, more often than not, they are someone who is in control of things. They're organized, they may have a position of authority at their job, they may be in charge of their household, they may have kids to wrangle. They have a lot of situations in their real life where they are required to be the one taking control, being in charge, organizing, being responsible. And consequently, there is a large part of them that wants to escape, who wants the release of letting over control to someone else and just not having to be the one worrying about everything. One of my first partners was someone who was very much like that. In her everyday world, she was the top dog. She had to maintain the household. She had a very demanding job that required her to be supervising a lot of people, doing a lot of things. And so when that was done for the day, she just wanted to not have to be the one in charge. But she was a natural organizer. And so, she had to take control. So when it came to being a submissive, it required someone to be a dominant that was of a very specific type in order that she felt comfortable giving over control, because her instincts told her not to. Now, not to toot my own horn, so to speak, but I was one of these people, and when she felt comfortable enough in letting someone else take control, those kinds of people can be very, very good submissives in the sense of the power exchange. Now, on the flip side, you have people who are natural submissives, and these are people who have an innate desire to please. You may know people like this yourself. In my experience, these are the kinds of personalities that you have to be more cautious with as a dominant, because it is possible, not necessarily inherently likely, but it is possible that someone who is naturally submissive and naturally wants to please will forego their own comfort for the sake of pleasing their dominant if they come across a dominant they feel comfortable with. This is why communication is important. This is why the dominant has to be very aware of what's going on with the person. Watch out for, nonverbal cues. Be very communicative in the negotiation process, during a scene, and so on. Because a dangerous aspect to a natural submissive can be that they will not tell you that something's wrong for fear of upsetting you. And that is a dangerous place to be. Now, it's not to say that you have to walk around on eggshells with someone all the time. I mean, you will be dealing, conceivably, with a mature adult on the other side of this power exchange. Even though they are the submissive, it is their responsibility to be truthful to you as the dominant. If there is not an honest exchange of communication between both parties, then problems will arise regardless. So you can be the most, straightforward, empathetic, watchful dominant, but if your submissive holds back information from you, there's going to be problems. And that's just how things go. I mean, that's just like any other regular relationship. If you're not honest with the person that you're being romantically involved with, whether it's just BDSM involved or romantic or both, problems will arise. So that's a general overview of both the power exchange dynamic and the role of the submissive. Again, I kept a relatively high-level perspective on the submissive role because, again, I can't directly speak to it. I could give you examples of submissives that I've been with in a general sense, but it would be disingenuous of me to tell you what it's like to be a submissive because I've never been in that role. I'm still feeling my way around how these videos are going to work. So your comments are very important. Do you find these things informative? Is there something else I could be going into greater depth with? Is there a subject that you'd like to hear me cover or speak on? By all means, leave a comment and let me know. I do pay attention to them. And also, the reason that these videos are relatively short right now is because there's a 15-minute cap on video length for channels that are below 100 subscribers. So after I've hit 100 subscribers, and granted, I come across a situation where I feel the need to do a video that's longer than 15 minutes, I can make longer videos. I don't foresee that I'll need to, but you never know. So that's why that is. In any case, as always, thank you for listening.